Hello everyone, how y'all doing? So, I'm recording this video because I actually have some pretty good news. A couple of days ago, I complained about the fact that Hololive Dreams didn't work on Linux, and it seems to be, at least in part, due to the fact that the game has kernel level anti-cheat, and I was complaining about the fact that, hey, why is a goddamn anime VTuber game requiring a kernel level anti-cheat in the first place? And why is that preventing Steam Deck and Steam machine users from playing a game just because of anti-cheat, which is actually no, anti-cheat alone is not even the issue. It's kernel level anti-cheat on a goddamn VTuber game. Like, dude, how many people are even gonna play this game? Like, how many people are even gonna cheat this? Like, whatever. I've complained about this anyway. Let's talk about solutions. And as a matter of fact, we do have solutions because I was, just this is something I tend to do regularly. I will sometimes just revisit ProtonDB pages from games that I've played in the past and maybe I had some trouble. Just because, I always want to believe that, hey, maybe someone ended up finding a solution. And thankfully, there was a solution because there's this version of Proton called DW Proton. I've seen this mentioned a couple of times, but I've never actually used it. And I'll be honest with you, I think from now on I might end up having to experiment with this a little bit because it does seem like DW Proton, it is a different, version of like the Proton runners and like all of the other ones that exist. And something that I've noticed is that it does seem like DW Proton tends to, they tend to implement a lot of patches and fixes that end up helping a lot of anime games, especially. I do think they mostly tend to focus on gacha games, but they do mention anime games in general, at least based on what I've heard from the public. It's pretty reliable when it comes to that. And the good thing is that, they do eventually end up merging a lot of this stuff to the mainline versions of Proton. So it's not like you have to specifically download DW Proton if you want to play specific games. A lot of those patches eventually end up getting merged to mainline Proton. So it's not really like a case of, hey, either use this or don't. And yeah, I did see that people were mentioning this, so I thought to myself, hey, why not try out DW Proton? Now, of course, if you're already familiar with the Linux environment, you probably already have an idea of how you would typically install this. But basically, if you have Proton plus Proton up Qt probably has DW Proton. Let me actually double check. No, I have to add version GE. Oh, I guess they don't have it. There's a reason for why I haven't been using Proton up Qt as much recently, but yeah, Proton Plus it does have. So you see here Proton GE, and then there's DW Proton. So you can click here, and you will specifically have to download the 11.0-11 because that's the one that actually has the patch. They even they even mentioned here implemented missing features and fixed blockers preventing Hololive Dreams from launching. Game now works out of the box, which is very cool. And that's exactly the one that I installed. It's exactly the runner that's currently in my compatibility. And I can tell you right now that the game does work, but there are still a couple of things that I want to complain about. So I'm going to launch the game, and there's one problem. So as you can see here, this game does not support controllers. Now, I am using my Dual Shock controller, but I also decided to enable Steam input because I'm hoping for some kind of miracle. And the thing is, let me actually try. Yep, nothing. Nothing yet. Like, keyboard and mouse work. And to be fair, for the type of rhythm game that this is, you probably will eventually end up using your keyboard anyway. But I was hoping at least for the open world navigation, I would much rather use my controller. Now, another thing is, I ended up logging into the same account that's on my tablet, but I noticed that the quality seems to be, yeah, this right here. Increasing the frame rate settings may impact performance. Yeah, the thing is, when I launched this game, I picked the quality mode, but for some reason, and I'm pretty sure I also picked 60 FPS, but for some reason, it just didn't save those options. Okay, so I'm going to disable VSync. I'm going to put this at 60 FPS, and I'm going to put this in the highest quality because for some reason, I put the game in high, but the game still looks still look pretty blurry, so I'm gonna pick the highest. I don't know. Actually, it says custom here. Oh, okay. So if I put highest, that's the equivalent of just putting everything in the highest. Okay, fine. Listen, I'm playing this on PC. It's a goddamn gacha game. I wanna believe that I'm not gonna run into any frame rate issues. One other thing is this game only goes up to 60 FPS, which for you know, I know I've been calling this a rhythm game. I do also want to mention that the game actually does have some other things you can do beyond rhythm games, but I do feel like that's kind of like the main crutch. But there's a couple of other things. I've noticed some gameplay footage from like some people that play this game. Apparently there are some like events in which, you know, there's some like sort of like party-esque events that you do, so it's not exclusively a rhythm game. But I'm specifically installing this game because it's a rhythm game, and I gotta say, 60 FPS for a rhythm game is actually pretty low. You know, there's a lot of games where I can tolerate 60 FPS. Rhythm games are actually not one of them. I would much rather have a much higher frame rate than this. But anyway, quality settings have been changed. Return to title screen. Okay, sure. Let's see if the quality of the game improves a little bit. Because when I tried launching this game, it looked very blurry. Okay. This is a little better now. This is a little better than what I was getting earlier. And from what I'm seeing there, GPU about 13%. That's not bad. That's actually not pretty bad. You know what? That's actually pretty impressive. Now I'm very curious about something. Hang on. Oh wait, hang on. Let me just try to test the controller. Yeah, as I expected, it's not gonna work. Anyway, hang on. Let's actually close this game. And now I'm very curious about something. If it's this easy to run this game, then let's actually switch the monitor. Let's go with my my AOC monitor, which is my 1440p monitor. Let's expand right here and let's open Steam. Now let's change it to DP3. All right, let's launch it again. Oh wait, actually no. Before launching it, let me check something else. It's in the controller settings. Oh wait, I have to open it here. Current button layout, keyboard. I wonder if there are any community ones. Okay. Let's download this one. I'll trust it. All right, let's go back. Let's see if this helps. I've had pretty mixed opinions with community button mappings, but let's see if this one works. All right, let's go to menu, quality settings, still 60 FPS. That part's not gonna change, but is gonna change is the resolution. Let's go to 1440p. Wait, that's it? It's not gonna ask me to restart? Huh. Okay. Okay. Alright, let's see if my controller works now. Nope, it does not. Yeah, I have very mixed. My experience with trying these community button mappings are very mixed. Maybe I'll try later on. But yeah, the game increased to 31% GPU utilization. It's very easy to run this game. Now, I'm just gonna tell you right now, ain't no way I'm playing any of the rhythm game aspects because this game, for obvious reasons, will have copyrighted content, so I'm not risking that, not by a mile shot. I know it's Hololive, but hey, it's still copyrighted content. I have no idea if, I mean, I'm sure their music library is already uploaded to YouTube's Content ID database, so even if they don't actively flag people for copyright, that doesn't mean that YouTube's content ID isn't going to auto flag me. So I'm not even gonna bother to try. Not even gonna bother. Oh yeah. So the S key is disabled on this screen. Oh, okay. It does seem like it's actually easier to skip because when I was playing this on my tablet, like I would tap the screen, but it still wouldn't show this because tapping the screen is only meant for skipping the dialogue. But apparently, you have to like click like a specific corner of the screen in order to skip the dialogue, which is very annoying. But here I can just click with my mouse, so it's much easier. You know what? Let me just exit this game. Man, this game actually looks a lot sharper on my 1440p monitor. Actually, let me check my song shop. I didn't know there was a song shop. It is loading something, right? Because I clicked it. It's not doing anything. Come on. Come on. Alright, there it is. I didn't know I had to buy songs. Okay, let me see here. Blue Clapper. I know Blue Clapper. Oh, son of a bitch. It's playing the song. Nah, this is too risky. Nah, I'm sorry. I'm not even gonna bother testing the waters with YouTube's content ID system. But I am gonna exit the game because I want to test other... I want to test a couple of things. One other thing I did also want to mention while I'm recording this video is that my disc copy of Blue Reflection Quartet finally arrived, which is really, really nice. And there's a couple of things I also wanted to mention. So, for starters, I just want to make it clear. My PS5 has been disconnected from the internet for a few months. And so, if you ever hear me talk about any games that I've bought recently, or I decided to install for the first time I'm on console recently, my experience is going to be based on the version 1.0, meaning the version of the game that comes in the disc, meaning no updates, no patches, nothing like that. Just want to make it clear because one of the biggest misconceptions that I think people have about physical media is that you're required to patch them. But I'm just telling you right now, for the past, like for example, Blue Reflection Quartet isn't even the only game that I recently bought. There was also Marvel Token, and I've been playing Marvel Token for quite a few hours. I have not encountered any issues, and that is the version 1.0 of the game. So yeah, I do really hope that eventually we can kind of end this misconception that like every game requires a patch. I have not patched these two games. I literally cannot patch them. My console is disconnected from the internet. I literally cannot patch them, but they still work. So, but yeah, Blue Reflection Quartet, there's a couple of things I want to note. So the first one, and unfortunately this was the one thing I was very concerned, which is the fact that one of the things that I've always complained about the PC version of Blue Reflection, both the Quartet build as well as the original one, is the fact that the UI of the menu, like the menu overall, seems like it's rendered at a lower resolution than the one you picked. Because if you play the PlayStation 4 version, everything from both the game's internal graphics, the in-game graphics, as well as the menu, the elements, and everything like that, they're all rendered at 4K. Now, I used to think it was checkerboard upscaling, but like I looked up online, it might not actually be checkerboard upscaling. I think they might have actually internally rendered those games at the resolutions in question. But for some reason, on the PC version, that just wasn't really the case. Like, you would open the menu and it was running at 1080p. And I was really concerned that the PS5 version would also have the same problem. And unfortunately, it does have, which creates a very awkward scenario because, like, if I gotten to the point where I feel like I'm actually getting a better experience with the PS4 build and the PS5 build of Blue Reflection, the first game, it's so weird. It's such a weird thing to be that way. But it seems to be the case. For some reason, I'm getting... The game just looks sharper. I did also notice that the colors look a bit more vibrant on the PS4 version. I don't know if that's because of HDR. Like, the game doesn't really say that it has HDR support, so I don't know if that's the case. But, like, the colors did look vibrant as well. That one might just be placebo effect, to be fair, but still. I don't know. It's just a weird phenomenon where it's like... Well, my controller still doesn't work. This is gonna be a nightmare. Okay, let's try. Let's try something else. But yeah, I don't know. It's just. Oh wait, is it because I enabled Steam input? Maybe. Hang on. Let's disable it. Let's disable the Steam input and just use the default settings. I'm saying this mainly because they do say here this is for Sony DualShock 4, so let's try it like this. And you know what? I'll even restart the entire client. But yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, especially because look, a lot of people have been complaining about the fact that the first game especially has more censorship. And here's the thing, I am not like, you know, I'm not someone who's like that. Wait, World War Z. It's 7:49. Hello. Hello. Anyway, I'm not someone who's like that gun-ho about censorship. Like, look, if Gust wants to like censor certain parts of the games because they're concerned about, you know, the current age ratings as well as the borderline tyranny of payment processors, and they really want to try their best to avoid any issues that they might encounter because of all that, fine. I can deal with some censorship. It's not the end of the world. My overall opinion of the game is not gonna go to complete zero just because the game decided to censor some stuff. Of course, I'm not pro censorship. I would rather the game not be censored. I would rather the game exist in the way it was originally intended. But you know, if they need to censor some things, I'm a bit more accepting than other people. But I will say is that other people, they do take the censorship stuff more seriously. And you know, yeah, the game has some quality of life improvements, but it's like, okay, fine. Like you can skip cutscenes, you can, you know, increase the speed, which doesn't even increase it to that much. Like when you're running, it's not even really running. You're just kind of walking normally because the game does not have any running mechanic. So, okay, let's see if the controller works. It still doesn't work. It still doesn't work. I don't know, man. Maybe it's gotten to the point where I might just end up having to restart my entire computer just to be sure. But yeah, anyway, like, if you're like, sure, the quality of life improvements, they're cool, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like, you know, compared to Blue Reflection Second Light, where you're getting an entire new party, I don't know if the quality of life improvements that you're getting in the first game are as big as the one you're getting on Second Light. And if it gets to that point, it kind of makes you think, I don't know, man. I don't know. Some people might feel more compelled to play the original version. That's all I'm saying. I don't know, man. I think they kind of fumble with that. I'm gonna be honest with you. Okay, hang on. Press R1 to use the radical menu. The left analog. Share select works as a skip button. Okay, let's try this one. Apply layout. This game has built-in control support for some controls, but not yours, so we're using Steam input to translate. Okay. Oh, so I did still need to use Steam input. Okay, that's fair. All right, let's use this community button map. Let's see if this one works. But anyway, the fact that the PS4 version looks sharper is a little bit embarrassing. I honestly don't know what drove them to that situation, but it is what it is, I guess. Now, Blue Reflection Second Light, on the other hand, I'm actually pretty impressed with what I'm getting. Because I was a little bit concerned that maybe the performance... Wait, why is my region US? That's weird. I was a little bit concerned that I might end up encountering some performance problems because the thing about... It's still not working. It's still not goddamn working. Fine, I'll probably just end up having to restart the computer. Because I think I remember encountering a very similar issue with Hatred where I was using the community button maps, but I think I had to restart my computer before they actually started to work. So I'll just end up having to do that later. But anyway, Blue Reflection Second Light, I was a little bit concerned because over time I started to realize that Blue Reflection Second Light is very sensitive to clock speeds. Like if you E. I have to click E. Thank you. Because that's one game where if you don't, like, I'd say, at least on PC, ideally you would want to have like you'd want to have your CPU running at like 4 gigahertz, above 4 gigahertz. That's at least my experience, because something that I've noticed is that when I was testing the game on my VM, the thing about virtual machines is that it's not always the case where your CPU is actually going to run at the maximum speed. And that's because you are kind of relying, because like, for example, if I'm gaming on Linux, there are enough patches on the mainline kernel, as well as some like gaming packages like game mode that you can install that kind of allocates the CPU power to run at like performance mode. Because generally speaking, the Linux, I wouldn't even say schedule, I'd say the Linux governor, the Linux CPU governor isn't exactly optimized for gaming, or at least historically hasn't exactly been optimized for gaming. Nowadays, I think that it kind of is actually pretty significantly, but historically Linux wasn't really something that was meant for gaming. This is an operating system. I'm going to say operating system, it's kernel, but whatever. GNU/Linux is an operating system primarily designed for servers. So it doesn't exactly have like the right optimizations for like allocating the CPU power to like maximum whenever you're gaming. And over time we started to apply a lot of patches that I feel like it's able to recognize when the game, when it needs to use more CPU power for gaming. But on a VM, it's still not exactly good at recognizing that. It's still not good. It's still not exactly good. So sometimes you will need to open the terminal and manually change the CPU governor to performance in order to get the highest performance. And doing that, it does actually help. It does actually help with some games, and it definitely did help with Blue Reflection Second Light. Because if I, for example, left it in the default settings, the game, I would notice the clock speeds, it might be somewhere around like 3 gigahertz, and like whenever I've noticed that, like the game just wasn't really running very smoothly. Like it was sometimes going around like 30 FPS. It just wasn't really good. But then if I decided to enable the governor to performance, then yeah, it would reach around the maximum clock speed of the CPU that I had, which was like a Zen 3 CPU. So it's like 4.6 maybe. It's able to reach that point. And yeah, at that point, yes, I was able to get like a 60 FPS experience. And that's at least what I've noticed. And obviously the PS5, the PS5 is based on Zen 2. And it's also clocks at maximum 3.5. So I was a little bit concerned if the CPU clock speed might be a potential bottleneck for the game, but so far it does actually seem that the game runs pretty well, like pretty smoothly. A lot of portions in the game that I would typically encounter performance problems, seems like it's still able to run pretty smoothly. Like, for example, when the sun's about to go down, it's like somewhere around late during the day or at night, as well as in Kokoro's Heartscape, a lot of the performance issues that I would typically expect, I haven't really found them. Now, to be fair, I was also at the very beginning of the game, so maybe if I start inserting a lot of facilities, I might end up encountering some performance issues. But at least up until the point where I played, it did genuinely seem like the game was running pretty smoothly, and I'm very happy. I was actually very happy, and the game also looks reasonably sharp. I mean, I'm saying this, but I'm not trying to say that like the first game doesn't. I'm not saying that the first game is rendered at 1080p. Like the in-game graphics are still rendered at whatever resolution it is. I don't know if it's 4K or 1440p, because like my monitor is like a 27-inch monitor, so it's not exactly the best monitor for you to check if something is actually running in 4K or not. I could be misled, but regardless, it still looked pretty sharp. Blue Reflection Second Light. So yeah, that honestly got a pretty huge bump in the experience, especially because the first game, it was PlayStation Pro enhanced, and that's why it's able to render at 4K and as well as running 60 FPS. But Blue Reflection Second Light never really got a PlayStation Pro enhancement, because that was around the period when a lot of games started to not really promote themselves very heavily on the whole Pro enhancement thing, because I think that was around the time they were starting to like slowed down on the sales of PS4 Pro, as well as the fact that the PS5, I think at that point had already come out, so there wasn't really much of a push in trying to like push this idea that like, hey, you can get a better experience on the PS4 Pro. A lot of games weren't really optimizing too heavily on that, and honestly, Blue Reflection Second Light is kind of a poorly optimized game anyway, so I don't know how much if an improvement you get on a PS4 Pro anyway. So it never really got that sort of like, hey, if you play this on a PS5, you're gonna get a better experience. Not really. You're getting a very similar experience as what you get on a base PS4. But with the PS5 build, you are getting a much better experience, definitely. So I just wanted to say that, props, Gus. Let's give some credit to Gus. They were able to nail on that part. So yeah. Anyway, that's all I want to share. I'm still really mad I can't play with a controller. I'm gonna find a way. I promise you I'll find a way. But anyway, that's all I really wanted to share. And yeah, I'm glad I was able to get Hololive Dreams to work on my computer, because like the rhythm game stuff, I would really much rather play at 60 FPS. And hey, the game, when you have highest graphics, it looks nice. It looks a lot nicer than it does when I was in like high or like medium or whatever. So cool, that's all I want to share. Thank you all for watching.